This program contains coarse language.
They signed off and disappeared, leaving their fate shrouded in mystery.
It just points out to one thing: human interference.
Did Malaysian officials make a series of errors that sealed the plane's fate?
Yeah, it's a major scandal here. I say it is their responsibility. They have to answer to the people.
I do not want to be trapped by dates, by numbers, by names, by rank.
MH370, the great modern aviation mystery. Welcome to Four Corners. There are a number of chilling elements to the disappearance of the Malaysian Airlines flight in the early hours of Saturday, March 8. But the eeriest is to think that even as the plane with 239 people on board was being reported as missing, feared crashed, it was still somewhere in the air, flying in the opposite direction to its scheduled destination. That fact is at the heart of tonight's remarkable reconstruction of the ghost plane's final hours. That while Malaysia Airlines officials and even the Malaysian Air Force were apparently ignoring repeated early warnings that something was badly amiss, those passengers and crew were still in the air, alive or dead, on a prolonged journey to oblivion. What has followed is a litany of embarrassing failures by multiple authorities in Malaysia to take the action they should have taken. Tonight, after the most extensive search in aviation history, reporter Caro Meldrum-Hanna puts together the various pieces of a baffling mosaic and speaks exclusively to the family of the pilot accused of crashing his own plane.
Address 70, we are ready, requesting flight number 350 to Beijing.
For Malaysian 370, flight to Beijing.
It's 12:26 a.m. at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Saturday, March the 8th.
Shankar, Malaysian 370, good morning. 21, requesting push and start.
For air traffic control, it's another hot and humid night.
Runway 3 to right, exit via Sierra 4.
Approaching 3, 2, right.
On the tarmac, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is nearing takeoff. Piloting the plane is 53-year-old Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah. More than 18,000 hours flying experience, an unblemished flying record, a 30-year veteran of the airline.
Zahari was an invisible pilot. Now, all pilots in the airline like to be invisible, meaning bosses don't know about them, meaning they just go, do their work well, pass all their exams.
Inside the cockpit, seated to Captain Zahari's right, is 27-year-old Farik Abdul Hamid. Radioing air traffic control, it's his first stint co-piloting a Boeing 777 aircraft without a Czech co-pilot supervising.
Line up 32, right Alpha 10, MAS 370.
It sounds quite normal. Tends to be, radio communications can be quite relaxed. You know, there is a protocol, but it can be quite relaxed, particularly when things are going normally.
Around 2 hours earlier, while the plane was being prepared for flight, 227 passengers from 14 nations, including Australia, began checking in at Kuala Lumpur Airport. 2/3 are Chinese nationals, all bound for Beijing. At At 12:41 a.m, MH370 is ready to fly.
370, seat right of takeoff.
Flying conditions are almost perfect. Minimal wind and cloud forecast for the 6-hour flight. The 4,500 kilometre flight path would normally take MH370 over Vietnam, crossing the coast of mainland China just west of Hong Kong, and then into Beijing. An easy trip for the Boeing 777 plane, which had passed its maintenance check just 12 days earlier.
The 777, how would you describe its safety record?
Safety record has been exemplary for a modern jet airliner.
The 777, you know, you can't get lost even if you tried. It is that good. It's a very, very good aeroplane.
Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350.
At 1:19 a.m, MH370 is cruising at 35,000 feet, a Boeing 777's optimal altitude. As it approaches Vietnam's airspace, exiting Malaysia's, controllers direct the pilot to make the routine switch to air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh City.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Seconds later, a male voice inside the cockpit responds.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
This is the last time anyone will hear from MH370, a final goodbye from the doomed midnight flight. Within minutes, without notifying anyone on the ground, MH370 veers radically off its regular flight path to Beijing.
The only reason for deviating from an intended track is either for weather or for some under air traffic control requirement because of some problem.
Neither of those.
Neither of those are a factor.
5 hours later, at 6:30 a.m, MH370 is due to land at Beijing International Airport, but it's nowhere to be found.
I mean, it's without precedent. How can a modern jet airliner just disappear?
At 7:24 a.m, Malaysia Airlines release a statement on Facebook. Malaysia Airlines confirms that flight MH370 has lost contact with Subang Air Traffic Control at 2:40 a.m. today. The world is unaware that MH370 is actually still flying.
Oh yes, yes. It was just running out of fuel. He was just having 6 tons of fuel in tanks. Yes, it was flying.
As we turned on our televisions, that plane was still in the air.
Chilling. When I got the message on my phone, aeroplane was still airborne. It's chilling.
Unaware of the fate of their loved ones, distressed relatives begin to arrive at Kuala Lumpur Airport.
Fuck you!
A nation starts praying for the plane's safe return.
I just want to clarify on the timing of the disappearance.
Over the following days, government officials struggle under pressure, with little information to release.
We don't know exactly what happened to the aircraft. We just cannot...
Nearly 300 different news agencies descend on Kuala Lumpur, all desperate for answers.
But after a few days of flip-flop and refusal to release critical information, people are becoming more cynical.
The government's press conferences are quickly overrun by a furious media pack.
Wait, stop, it's gonna fall. Stop, relax.
soon the doors are closed on the media, fueling claims of conspiracy and cover-up.
都12天了，我的儿子在哪？你们这为什么不给我一个交代？我的儿子。
You say it's a conspiracy.
Conspiracy merely to protect the people who have not done the job they're supposed to do.
And who hasn't done their job?
I guess the people who are on duty that night.
The Air Force, the Malaysian Airlines, the Kuala Lumpur Airport Authority. I mean, it's a good number of agencies involved.
So how did MH370 and everyone on board vanish without a trace, when so many eyes were watching it that night?
What sort of mystery is this?
It's huge. It's huge. It just doesn't, these sort of events just don't happen.
The mystery of Flight 370 begins just after 1:19 a.m.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Around 90 seconds after the final good night.
These 90 seconds are very key. These 90 seconds actually defines the whole of MH370's MH370 going missing. That 90 seconds.
At 1:21 a.m, MH370's transponder is turned off or fails. Located on the centre console of the flight deck, the transponder is the plane's main mode of identification by air traffic control using civilian secondary radar on the ground.
It's actually a positive response to the ground, and it contains information like the aircraft height, speed, flight number, and its destination.
Four Corners has spoken to more than a dozen 777 pilots. All of them agree, unless there's a malfunction, the transponder should never be turned off during flight.
There's no reason I can think of, operational reason, that the aircraft would have that transponder turned off. There's no reason to do so.
Could that be done accidentally?
No.
I do not know who switched off the transponder, but certainly that diabolical act started with the switching off of that transponder.
Around the same time, Four Corners understands someone inside the cockpit began interfering with the in-flight entertainment system. And a second key data messaging system also stops transmitting. The Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, ACARS.
It would give information about the various pressures and temperatures within the engine, oil levels, speeds of rotation.
ACARS records and transmits the health of the plane during flight, and it's designed to never be turned off in the air.
If it's something that somebody wished to do as a positive step, then you'd have to research how it was going to be achieved.
So you need to know what you're doing.
Exactly.
It just points out to one thing: human interference.
The question is, did someone in the cockpit deliberately turn the transponder and the ACARS off, or were both systems disabled by a fire or malfunction on board?
Do you believe that this was human intervention, or do you believe it's possible that the communication systems were knocked out by, say, a fire?
Yeah, it could have been, quite easily.
So where would the fire have been in order to strike out those communications?
The electronics bay, which is right beneath where the pilots sit.
If there was a fire or explosion on board, could the plane continue to fly?
It's beyond the bounds of probability, in my view.
There is no mechanical malfunction that enables an aircraft to fly but kills the radio. And fly, this is not just fly, this is fly for the next 7 hours.
With ACARS off, what does that actually mean then, now that the transponder and ACARS is off?
You're slowly shutting off the methods of communication between the aircraft and the ground.
Only a few people on board MH370 had the skill and the knowledge to take over the plane and shut down its communication systems. Early on, one person in particular stood out, the captain.
Captain Zahari has the best opportunity and certainly capability. Opportunity meaning that he has control over time and how events can unfold.
He's the most powerful person on that aircraft.
Most powerful person on that particular aeroplane, yes, indeed.
But could Captain Zahari be a rogue pilot on a suicide mission, taking 238 people with him? These are the last known recorded images of Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah, seen here clearing security with co-pilot Farik Hamid at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, moments before flying MH370. So who is Captain Zahari?
Hi everyone, this is a YouTube video that I made as a community service.
In this home video, uploaded to Facebook in January 2013, Zahari explains how to save on electricity.
This video is to be used to optimize your heat pump or your compressor. So it has to go.
Highly intelligent and technically savvy, Captain Zahari was also obsessed with aviation. Joining Malaysia Airlines as a cadet in 1981, according to the company's former chief pilot Nick Haslan, Zahari had an impeccable record.
What was his reputation then as a pilot?
He was methodical. Methodical, he kept very good notes, and he was generous.
If tabloid media reports using unnamed sources are to be believed, Captain Zahari was a man on the edge, weighed down by personal problems, a failing marriage, in no state to fly that night. Captain Zahari's family has remained silent until now. For the first time, tonight they speak publicly, in Penang, with Zahari's brother-in-law, Aswad Khan, agreeing to speak to Four Corners on behalf of his sister, Faiza, Zahari's wife.
And how close were you two?
As a friend, yeah, and as a brother-in-law, definitely.
How often did Captain Zahari return to Penang?
Every year.
Why have you decided to speak with us?
Well, because what I can see that a lot of people saying a lot of things about him, which is untrue.
It was reported that in the 24 hours leading up to flight MH370, Captain Zahari's wife had left him, taking their children with her to another house. According to Zahari's brother-in-law, the rumours are completely false.
I don't believe it, because she's at home. Well, the normal procedure for their what they call it, whenever the husband fly, the wife will go to another house where the younger son's staying. Otherwise, she'll be alone at that big house. That's been practiced since they bought the house.
That was their routine?
Yeah, their routine. You can see that.
A difficult question I need to ask you.
Go ahead.
Again, personal life. Well, all of these rumours need to be discussed.
Okay.
It was reported that Captain Zahari also had a girlfriend.
That I do not know about. Even if I know, I said, why not? We are allowed to, as long as you take a good care of your wife. Even if you ask my sister, she said she don't care. He can marry another one. Why not? We can marry 4. We are Muslim.
A self-confessed aviation geek, Zahari built a flight simulator in his home, spending hours practicing emergency landings, inviting friends over to have a go.
In terms of Captain Zahari's time spent on the simulator, was it a secret of his?
The flight simulator is definitely not a secret of his. He was proud of it, and since he installed it about a year ago, he's been proudly showing it off in the Facebook. So there's nothing sinister about it.
many pilots have flight simulators at home. For Zahari, it's become the subject of intense media speculation, claims that he deleted simulator data before flying MH370. But Aswad Khan says his sister, Faiza, Zahari's wife, told him that the flight simulator broke in 2013.
That simulator was dismantled already. The things crashed. It don't work. So he got to reformat the drive.
To be clear, Captain Zahari's wife has told you that he was not on that simulator this year, except to try and reinstall.
Yes.
He did not practice extreme landings and takeoffs.
This year, I don't think so, because the simulator is not working.
Captain Zahari was also politically minded, a strong supporter and distant relative of opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim.
Back in court again.
In what many believe is a politically motivated trial, on Friday the 7th of March, Ibrahim was sentenced to 5 years jail for the crime of sodomy. It's rumoured Zahari was in court in Kuala Lumpur for the verdict, just hours before he piloted MH370, leading to claims he took the plane down in political protest, a distressed activist, a political fanatic. But his brother-in-law Aswad Khan says Zahari wasn't at court.
Was Captain Zahari at the trial of Anwar Ibrahim?
No. I asked my sister personally. Even my sister herself informed him on what happened on that day.
So the idea that Captain Zahari was so distressed by the ruling in this court case that he took a plane on a suicide mission, that is ridiculous.
And making that decision within, 4 or 5 hours, it's absolutely ridiculous.
A prime suspect with no apparent motive. To date, there's no proof Zahari is responsible. But we can prove how MH370 was allowed to disappear that morning, starting on the ground with air traffic control at 1:20 a.m. 1 minute, MH370 blips regularly on civilian radar screens. The next, transponder disabled, it's gone.
When you can't see the target or the radar display of the aircraft and label disappear, you'd start to become quite concerned immediately.
That didn't happen. At the exact moment the transponder and the ACAR stop working, MH370 is flying through a technically obscure grey zone, a vulnerable handover point between two airspace sectors, Malaysia and Vietnam.
If I was going to take the aircraft over and want to make the aircraft disappear, this is exactly when I would do it.
Did MH370 fly to outsmart air traffic control?
Yes.
As MH370 reaches Vietnam airspace, it's directed to switch over to air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh City, standard procedure for any plane following a commercial flight path.
Any pilot worth his salt, any pilot anywhere in the world, when you're handed over, you switch frequency. In the case of 777, you probably have that frequency already on the spare box.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night.
In Vietnam, officers on duty wait for MH370 to check in, a grace period reportedly of up to 5 minutes.
I tell you, it's all done in one swoop. Malaysian 370, good night, over to Ho Chi Minh. Click, Ho Chi Minh, Malaysian 370, good morning. That's all it takes. Exactly that long. That did not happen.
Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control waits and waits for MH370 to respond.
How normal is it for the plane simply to not check in?
Unheard of, unless there was a problem on board the airplane with communications.
If there was a problem with them the aircraft not calling Vietnam, they should have gone straight back to Kuala Lumpur.
Instead, almost 20 minutes pass. At 1:38 a.m, Ho Chi Minh finally calls air traffic control in Kuala Lumpur. They've failed to make contact with MH370.
20 minutes?
Yeah, well, it's way too long. It's way too long. That would have been, you would think that would have happened in the first 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
The delay is soon compounded by misinformation coming out of Malaysia Airlines Operations Centre. At around 2 a.m, the airline makes the first of 3 stunning communication errors. According to this timeline of events released by the Malaysian government, an airline employee told the nearby air traffic control centre that the aircraft was in Cambodian airspace. And again at 2:15 a.m, MH370 was flying in Cambodian airspace. 20 minutes later, at 2:35 a.m, a third time, with Malaysia Airlines operations even giving coordinates.
Is it not concerning that at 2 a.m, the authorities know that 370 is in an airspace and an area that it shouldn't be?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's more surprising that the control authorities cannot see the aircraft, but Malaysian Airlines supposedly is reporting the position of that aircraft.
What's even more surprising, Malaysia Airlines not only provided misleading coordinates, the airline provided them before even trying to call MH370. According to information we've obtained, Malaysia Airlines Operations Centre made its first attempt to call MH370 at 2:39 a.m. That's 4 minutes after providing those misleading coordinates at 2:35 a.m. Despite the gravity of the situation, the airline made just one attempt to call MH370 by satellite phone in those crucial hours before it was due to land. Based on the government's timetable, air traffic control in both Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh continued to operate under Malaysia Airlines' confusing data, placing MH370 in Cambodian airspace until 3:30 a.m, when a correction was made.
Malaysia Airlines Operations Centre informed Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control Centre that the flight tracker information was based on flight projection and not reliable for aircraft positioning.
Unbelievably, another 2 hours would pass before Kuala Lumpur activated air search and rescue.
So they wait until 5:30?
That seems very long. There'd be other people that should have been informed, and those people I would have expected to have started a search and rescue coordination centre before that time.
With maximum confusion, delay and inaction on the ground, in the sky, whoever's in control of MH370 has bought invaluable time. At around 1:30 a.m, invisible in the air, the plane dramatically changes course, taking a wide left turn.
Would passengers have felt anything?
Not necessarily. It's night time, they're tired, probably falling asleep.
It's not known who's flying the plane. As it glides across the Malaysian peninsula, transponder off, now an unauthorised, unidentified object, MH370 isn't visible on civilian secondary radar, but it can be seen by the military's primary radar. It's spotted, then dismissed by military radar officers below.
So if there's not very many things flying around and they've all got transponder codes on, and all of a sudden one guy shows up on your screen who doesn't have a transponder code, that should have been an indication that something right off the bat was missed, that something needed to be, something was worthy of maybe making a phone call, investigating, seeing what was going on.
But it appears nothing was done. This is the route MH370 is believed to have taken. Based on its likely altitude and speed, it took MH370 around 15 minutes to fly across the peninsula. During that time, it was well within at least 2 of Malaysia's military radar zones, the last at Butterworth, Penang.
On that clear night, with very little air traffic and close to empty skies, MH370 flew almost directly over the top of Malaysia's military radar station located on the island of Penang. Four Corners understands that a team of up to 5 officers could or should have been on duty at the nearby Radar Operations Centre at Butterworth Air Base. Their job, to man the military radar screens, looking for unidentified aircraft entering Malaysia's airspace. What should the military have done that night?
The Air Force will be alerted and will have to then be flown to that area to either, normally to guide the plane to land or to leave the Malaysian airspace. That's standard operating procedure, and this was never done.
The military completely breached the standing operating procedures. Civil aviation.
The former First Admiral of the Royal Malaysian Navy, now member of the People's Justice Party, Imran Abdul Hamid, agrees.
Is it inexcusable for the RMAF chief to not have tracked down this plane and chased it in real time?
Definitely, if it is, if they knew the aircraft is passing through our country, definitely they must react. They should be responsible for what they are doing.
MH370 could have been blipping on military radar screens as an unidentified object for up to 40 minutes, until around 2:25 a.m.
Yeah, it's a major scandal here, because this is, of course, amounting to a major threat to national security.
But I say it is their responsibility. They have to answer to the people of Malaysia for failing to react. So the Chief of Defence Forces have to answer for it, the Chief of Air Forces have to answer for it. If they cannot answer it, I think they should leave the service for other people to serve the country.
But clearly, I think on the issue of the radar, there is no defence. Both the Minister of Defence and Minister of Transport have just completely ignored this.
41 days since MH370 disappeared at a defence expo in Kuala Lumpur. We asked the Minister to confirm reports that the Department of Civil Aviation rang the military, reporting they'd lost MH370, asking military officers on duty to look for the plane early that morning.
Minister Hishamuddin, ABC Television Australia. Did Civil Aviation contact the military, as has been reported, in the early hours of that morning?
Sorry?
Did Civil Aviation contact the military in the early hours the flight disappeared, as has been reported by Reuters?
When?
Contacted on the morning of the 8th. Would have been around 2 a.m. it's been reported.
No, I'm not going back.
Well, the record hasn't been corrected, and the question
it
still...
will be corrected. Like I said,
can you correct it today, please?
No, let it be corrected by all those involved. Okay, I'm at your disposal.
1 week later, at the Ministry of Defence, Minister Hishamuddin agreed to an interview with Four Corners to answer questions about what the military did and didn't do, for the first time confirming that Civil Aviation did ring the military that morning.
Did DCA contact the military?
Yes, they did.
What time?
You have to ask the DCA. And it will come out, the details. I think this, the dates, because I do not want to be trapped by, from my experience in the last 4 weeks, by dates, by numbers, by names, by rank.
Even though Civil Aviation had rung the military, possibly as early as 2 a.m, alerting officers on duty to look out for a lost, unidentified commercial plane, the military allowed MH370 to glide out to sea. Minister Hishamuddin told Four Corners that MH370 was tracked by the military in real time, but inexplicably dismissed as not hostile by the officer on duty. The military also decided not to send up one of its planes to investigate.
But why not send the jets up if you have conceded earlier that you knew very early in the morning the plane was missing? There was 4.5 hours time in which to respond and find out.
It was not hostile, it was commercial, it was from our airspace, we're not at war with anybody. Even if we send it up, are you going to say that we're going to shoot it down?
Well, you said that, not me.
No, I'm asking you.
I could not possibly answer that. I'm not a Minister of Defence.
If you're not going to shoot it down, what's the point of sending it up?
To see where it's going.
Well, to see it going, you need a fighter for that. If we're talking about military procedures. And if I did shoot it down, you'll be the first to say, how can you shoot down a commercial airline with 14 nationals, half of them Chinese? I'll be in a worse position, probably.
Why shoot it down if it's not hostile?
Well, the Americans would.
If the military didn't dismiss the plane as irrelevant, if the officers on duty took action, the government would have avoided another costly mistake, spending a week searching the wrong area, the South China Sea.
The DCA, with all the assisting agencies, have conducted a thorough rescue and search operations over a very wide area in the South China Sea.
It would take a team of determined satellite engineers across the globe for the Malaysian government to realise it was looking in the wrong place. The breakthrough came on the other side of the world, here in London, where a small group of satellite engineers began to painstakingly analyse the only data available from MH370 after its communication systems had been disabled. They didn't have much to go on. A sequence of 14 numbers, signals sent between the plane and a satellite hovering around 35,000 kilometres in the sky above. The data pointed to one crucial thing. The plane had continued to fly until 8:19 a.m. It didn't crash into the South China Sea as first thought.
I mean, this is basic physics that was used. What we did is use the data available in a different way. We combined the small bits of information a different way.
That information came from a ground station used by a satellite technology company Inmarsat on the outskirts of Perth. The ground station had been logging data on MH370's movements, a series of pings, after the ACAR's communication system on board stopped working.
And as a matter of procedure, they immediately picked up the logs for that plane.
The logs showed that although the ACARs had been disabled, MH370's satellite communications terminal, or SATCOM, was still operating. As it continued to fly, every hour the SATCOM was trying to communicate with Inmarsat's satellite, the F3, hovering in the sky above the Indian Ocean.
What happens is that our SATCOM terminal will, at regular intervals, we will have a handshake exchange with the teleport. You could call it, in technical terms, a sort of keep alive. Just checking that the timing is correct between the two, and that the channels, we have a number of channels available, and that they are available for use if needed.
Over 48 hours, Inmarsat's engineering team crunched the data, 7 timing numbers and 7 frequency numbers, in the hope of narrowing down the right search area.
So how are things going?
Yeah, I think we're making good progress. You can see the 7 arcs that we have after loss of radar contact, and you can see them extending down into the southern Indian Ocean. It was a painstaking period of detailed analysis and checking and validation. We had to be sure that we understood the data we had.
Inmarsat's data showed that MH370 made 7 handshakes with Satellite 3, indicating that the plane continued to fly into the morning, longer than first thought, and well away from the South China Sea. The last handshake at 8:19 a.m.
Does that prove that MH370 was flying until 8:19 a.m?
It proves that the SATCOM terminal was working until 0019 or 8:19, as you put it. It was still moving between 0011 and 0019. You can deduce that.
And there was nothing further, no data further from 8:19?
From that point onwards, no. There was an attempt at a handshake at 01:15, I believe, but that failed.
72 hours after MH370 was lost, on Tuesday the 11th of March, Inmarsat privately handed the data over to its distributor, which in turn gave it to Malaysia, showing that MH370 had continued to fly either north or south for several hours after it lost contact with the ground. Despite the data, 2 days later, on Thursday, Minister Hishamuddin publicly dismissed the possibility that MH370 continued to fly after it lost contact with the ground.
Before I take any questions, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to clear up a few issues. Firstly, being on the engine data. I would like to refer to news reports suggesting that the aircraft may have continued flying for some time after last contact. As Malaysian Airlines will confirm shortly, those reports are inaccurate.
At best, a communication breakdown. At worst, Inmarsat's data may have been ignored for several days by Malaysia. Remarkably, another 2 days would pass before the government abandoned its search in the South China Sea.
It took Malaysia several days to take Inmarsat's data on board and shift the search area. Was that a reasonable delay?
It's difficult to say, Carol. It's really difficult to say. We have, throughout this process, learned that in events of this magnitude, everybody has an opinion.
The minister told Four Corners Inmarsat's data had to be verified before the government could act.
And only when we had confirmation, corroboration, verification that the commercial flight that was detected by the military radar was the MH370, then we stopped our search in the South China Sea. That was after searching on all sorts of leads that were given. Fireballs in the sky, oil slicks, life rafts, lifeboats, even a Chinese satellite images in the South China Sea.
Absolutely. There was a lot to deal with at that stage. So is it a reasonable delay to need 3 days
Was it
to
3 days?
consolidate that data?
Yeah, I think that is wrong to just point out and throw a period of 3 days.
The Honourable Prime Minister of Malaysia.
2 weeks after MH370 was lost, on the 24th of March, Malaysia's Prime Minister publicly acknowledged Inmarsat's additional data, showing MH370 is likely to have ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
It is therefore with deep sadness and regret that I must inform you that according to this new data, flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
For the families of those on board, agony quickly turned to anger.
We want they give us the truth. That's what we want.
8 weeks on, out in the southern Indian Ocean, where MH370 is believed to have ended around 2,000 kilometres off the coast of Western Australia. No wreckage has been found. The battery on the black box has run out. There are no more signals to chase. Despite the cost, the search goes on, led by Australia.
We haven't found anything. The search continues in the adjacent areas, and hopefully we'll find something, but I would say that over the next 8 to 12 months we'll find the aircraft. We'll find its final resting place.
We now know multiple authorities watched MH370 disappear. Despite the inaction and the repeated failures that night by those in charge, no one in Malaysia has taken responsibility for the loss of MH370.
Going missing is a strange thing. Crashing is pretty normal. So when you crash, it's easy. The plane crashed. But missing, somebody must take responsibility. Is it the head of DCA? Or is it Malaysia Airlines itself?
If MH370's disappearance was the deliberate act of a person or persons unknown, then right at this moment it's shaping as a perfect crime, and the kind of fertile ground that will keep conspiracy theorists going for years. We did ask the Malaysian Department of Civil Aviation and Malaysia Airlines for an interview. Both declined. That's the program for tonight. Until the same time next week, good night.